Thank you for joining Jennifer Schaus and Associates in our 2019 Webinar Wednesday series. We're coming to you live from downtown Washington, D.C. Our webinars are every Wednesday, ending the upcoming schedule on our website. Past webinars and all recordings are also on our website and on our YouTube channel, along with over 160 other recordings on federal contracting topics. All are complimentary. If you have questions for our speaker today, you can email her directly with the contact information you'll see on the last slide. Right, that's just a little bit about us. We are a Washington, D.C. based firm and provide services for federal contractors. This ranges from market analysis reports to proposal writing and also post-award compliance. More information is on our website, so please visit us there. We do offer advertising in our newsletter, so you can reach out to us here if you'd like more information on that. All right, our speaker today is Anne Laurent. She's going to be covering OTA Small Innovators Route to Government Business. Thank you for joining us, Anne, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Okay, hi everybody. You can go to the first slide. That'd be great, Mallory. Thank you. So why do I think other transaction authority is a key route to government business? Well, there are four key reasons. One, the prototype agreements, other transaction prototype agreements are designed for innovative small businesses, and they're growing in value and in use. When a regular traditional federal or defense contractor attempts to use an other transaction, they must include at least one small, non-traditional contractor, or they have to contribute 1/3 of costs. Third, prototype authority was created to operate more like a commercial market, more like the commercial market operates. So it is designed to be more conducive for small businesses and non-traditional contractors to play. And fourthly, a prototype OT, if it is successful, can lead to a sole source award for production. So small businesses, while they may want to pair up with larger businesses to scale for production, still have that opportunity to move to production from a prototype other transaction. Next slide, please. So, as I said, the use of other transaction authority is increasing, as is spending through other transactions. As you can see here in fiscal 19, defense OT spending exceeded last year's $4 billion, and predictions are it's going to double next year, or rather this current fiscal year. And if you look at all OT transactions, mods and other things, they are up from 248 in 2016 to 618 in 2018. And new other transactions are up from 34 to 173. The biggest users of other transactions are Army, DARPA, and the Air Force. Air Force obligations alone increased 176% between fiscal 17 and 18. That's in a year. It was at their spend through OTs was at $1.2 billion by March 2019. And they're right now working on a recompete of one of their other transaction consortia, the Space Enterprises Consortia, because it has gotten so popular and because space is such a hot area, particularly for prototyping, that it looks like it's going to explode, and they want to expand the size of that consortium already just 2 years into its 5-year life. And they're thinking of expanding it to a $1.2 billion ceiling alone. That's just one of 4 Air Force other transaction consortia, and that's just one of 30 consortia that do other transactions government-wide. So we're talking about a very fast-growing area right here, and a place where if small non-traditional companies are not looking right now, small and non-traditional, they should be. So 88% of defense other transactions in 2016 to 2018 went to what are called non-traditional defense contractors, and many, if not most of those, are small businesses. Now, I say all of this with the caveat that federal procurement data system data is not complete as relates to other transactions. And of course, we all know that that data is somewhat dirty. So, all data that you see about contracting, but especially in the OT space, you should take with a grain of salt. I would guess that in this case, however, numbers are underestimated rather than overestimated. So the point being that this is a lively and growing source of business. So let's go to the next slide. So as I told you, all other transaction prototype agreements must include either or at least one non-traditional contractor participating to a significant extent, or all the participants must be smalls and non-traditionals, or as I told you, traditional contractors face a 1/3 cost share. So what's a non-traditional contractor? Well, for those of you who are small, it's most likely you. A non-traditional contractor must not currently or nor for the last year prior to any OT solicitation have been subject to full coverage under the cost accounting standards. And smalls generally aren't subject to full CAS coverage, so smalls generally are considered non-traditionals. So next slide, please. Thank you. So what is this prototype that we're talking about? There are various kinds of other transactions. Today I'm focusing only on, or specifically on prototype other transactions. A prototype under the definition that is encased in law must be a physical, virtual, or conceptual thing, and must include a model, or can include a model, a proof of concept, a design, a development, a process improvement, and other things unnamed. So the range of possible uses for other transactions is wide open. And not only that, but Congress in the 2018 National Defense Authorization told the Defense Department to prefer other transactions for prototypes and for science and technology programs. So that accounts to a fair extent for the growth in both number and in expenditures through other transactions. They are preferred by law. Next slide, please. So what is the range of the kind of work that's being solicited under the transactions? Is it amenable to the kinds of work that small and non-traditional companies, or rather contractors, are doing? And I wanted to give you a sort of a range of things that are either currently under solicitation or recently solicited or are going to be solicited using prototype OTs, so that you can see here artificial intelligence enabled speech to text capability. There's probably a number of small companies that do that kind of work. Hemorrhage detection technology in the health space, again, probably something that is not entirely unusual. We certainly know that supply chain management is not an unusual area for smalls to be involved in. So it is definitely well within the realm of possibility that there are other transactions being solicited or planning to be solicited that many smalls could take advantage of. Next slide, please. So how do we find these elusive other transaction opportunities? Well, more than half of the government's 2018 OTA spending went through what are called consortia. Programs also do independently issue other transaction solicitations, and that is actually becoming more common as the number and expenditures through other transactions rise. Those usually will be able to be found in what's Beta SAM now and was FBO. The ones that are issued through consortia are much more difficult to find, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But for the moment, anyway, consortia is probably the easiest route to finding other transactions opportunities. What are these consortia? They're partnerships between one or more sponsoring programs, usually defense programs, and a group of companies and other entities that claim competence in the sponsor's technical interest areas. So essentially, these are organized entities around a program's list of technical interest areas. So not uncommon in this kind of innovation space. For example, In-Q-Tel, which began, I think, in 1999, has been issuing the interest areas for first the CIA and now for the intelligence community, so that it can go out and find emerging companies and attract emerging companies to those interest areas. So this is a pretty common way of doing solicitation in the innovation space. Consortia in the OT world are run by nonprofit consortium management firms. They strike an other transaction with their program sponsor, and then generally they collect 1% of all executed prototype OTs that using their consortium. Sometimes they also collect a management fee from the sponsor, and they also collect membership fees from the companies that are in the consortium. And those fees can range from $500 to $1,000 to even much, much more, depending on the size of the company. So small companies generally can expect to pay in the $500 range per year per consortium which they join. And some of them, for that fee, will let you be a member of all of the consortia that the consortium management firm manages. Others do not do that. Next slide, please. So when I said that the solicitations are, we want to go to consortia considerations slide, please. There we go. So as I said, sometimes it's difficult to find the actual solicitations that are issued by consortia on behalf of their government programs. Most of them issue those solicitations only to members of the consortium, or they announce the general subject of a solicitation, but they don't provide the details unless you're a member. So if you're interested in locating other transactions through consortia, generally speaking, you have to be joining the consortia that you believe are going to have the most resonance for your capabilities. Now, it's also important to note that few of these solicitations from consortia to their members will appear in beta SAM, previously in FBO. This may change. Congress already has asked the Department of Defense for a report on all of their consortia and all of the solicitations, or rather the awards, prototype awards anyway, that have gone through them. And in the current 2020 NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, which is pending the Senate vote, going to go to the president and get signed, I presume, pretty soon. That request for reporting has increased to an annual report. So far, we have not seen the first of those reports, and it's not clear whether they'll be made public, but that is one way, if they are made public in the future, to discover what's been going on. Of course, that'll be after the fact. So it's important right now, if you want to pursue OTs through consortia, to join the consortia that you believe are representing programs that you could work with, because your capabilities meet their technical interest areas. Those interest areas are usually published on the website of each consortium. So you can at least see what the interest areas are publicly. Again, even if a consortium publicly shares the solicitations that it issues, only members can actually bid on those solicitations. By the way, I call them solicitations just because it's easier. Most of them are requests for white papers. In another webinar, we go into more depth about the way that these consortia issue requests for white papers for prototypes and how they actually work. It's definitely a FAR-free environment, that is Federal Acquisition Regulation-free environment. And so the solicitation and evaluation processes are much more streamlined than they are under the typical FAR contracting process. So because companies need to join consortia if they want to bid and if they want to find out about solicitations, it's just generally true that if you join one, you actually have to manage that membership. And that means that you have to pay a lot of attention when you're joining to discover what the tech areas are, as I said, but also, well, who is the program and who's the parent organization of that program that's actually issuing this OT for a consortium? You know, who are the personnel that are playing? These are things that you'd have to do pursuing any contract in the federal government. You've got to monitor the past awards to the extent you can, and I think that it's perfectly fair to ask to see what awards have gone through a consortium when you join it. You need to study the draft solicitations and begin to understand what the rhythm is and what the expectations are for this particular program. And you need to demand service from the consortium management firm. Most of them do try to provide services to their customers and to the consortium members, but it's important, if you're going to manage your relationship with a consortium management firm and your membership in the consortium, to ask for what you need. You know, the worst thing that can happen is you get a no, but the best thing that can happen is that you get a leg up and assistance in responding to requests for white papers. Next slide, please. So as you can see, thinking this through, if there are 30 consortia today across government and likely more coming, and if they all have different technical interest areas, some of which may overlap, do overlap, then it may behoove you to join one or even more than one consortium. That incurs money on your side, both as in the form of the membership fees, but also in the form of the labor of trying to figure out which consortia you should join, figure out what ones even exist, figure out whether or not the interest areas are this, you know, the same, represent the same capabilities that you actually have, et cetera. You've got to map your capabilities to your sponsor's needs if you're going to join a consortium. So we're going to give you information about how to make that decision, how to discover the extent of the consortium ecosystem, and how to locate those best match consortia for you in another webinar upcoming. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I've given you some I would say 20,000 foot level references and resources here for other transactions, so that you can at least begin to understand sort of what the general expectations are, what the general performance has been. There's two of them are fairly recent, just in 2019. The first one is a GAO report, and the second is a Congressional Research Service report. Both of them are recent and very useful. Next slide, please. If you do nothing else, you really must read the other transaction guide that now resides on the Defense Acquisition University site. It was issued in 2018. It contains just a ton of information, very clearly actually put forward, and lots of case studies and myths that are answered and explained in there. And so it's a very, very useful resource for anybody who is considering the consortium world and considering the other transaction world. And then I've given you a link to an article that I wrote actually not too long ago in September on Government Executive, talking about the proliferation not only of consortia, but of lots of other kinds of innovation hubs, as it were, across federal government, and looking at the difficulties in finding them, and also the importance of finding them and how to do that. I've actually, through my company, created a federal innovation ecosystem map, and I talk about that as well. So I thank you for listening, and look forward to hearing from you if you have questions, and I'll turn it back over to Mallory.
Thank you, Anne, for joining us today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her at the email or phone number shown on your screen. And this concludes the webinar. Thank you.